Okay, welcome to this tutorial where I'm going to walk you through a demo on how you can use EvoSuite. So first of all, some quick infos about EvoSuite. What is it actually? EvoSuite is a tool that automatically creates JUnit test cases with assertions for classes written in Java code. And these assertions then allow the developer to detect deviations from the expected behavior of the code. And EvoSuite can be configured towards specific coverage criteria, but by default, EvoSuite will try to maximize code coverage. And it does so by combining different criteria such as branch coverage, line coverage, outputs, and mutation testing. So let's cover some environment basics if you want to follow this tutorial. So first of all, you need to have the JDK in version 8 installed because we will be using the EvoSuite release 1.0.6 and that only works with the JDK 8. However, there would in theory be a new EvoSuite release 1.1.0 that should work with the JDK 11 and newer. However, I still had some issues with it, so we'll be using the slightly older release, but that one is stable but only works with the JDK 8. And the second thing we need is Maven, because Maven makes working with EvoSuite a lot easier because it takes a lot of work from us. And I currently have installed Maven in version 3.6.3. So if you have these two things, then we're basically ready to go and can have a look at the example project I created for this. So we have here, I created a project named EvoSuite tutorial and it's done with Maven. So like any Maven project, it has a pom.xml file. And this file simply contains the information about the project and configuration details. So here I specified two dependencies. First of all, the first dependency is on JUnit because we'll be working with JUnit to create the test cases. And I specified it on version 4.12. And the second thing we have is the EvoSuite standalone runtime, and this is later needed to execute the tests. Then we need the actual EvoSuite Maven plugin in version 1.0.6, like I stated earlier, and that's needed to create the automated JUnit tests. And lastly, we need to tell Maven where it can find this EvoSuite Maven plugin, and therefore we specify the EvoSuite repository with a link to the repository so Maven can find the plugin. Okay, so then let's have a look at the example class I created for this tutorial. So it's a class named exam with one method called grade. And like the name suggests, it's a function that should calculate the grade that a student scored in an exam. And to do this, it has two parameters. The first one is a Boolean called cheated, so that it should assert to true if the student was caught cheating and false if the student did not cheat. And the second parameter is an integer called points, and that simply stores the points that the student scored in the exam. So the function itself has a couple of if and else statements. The first one checks if the student scored somehow less than 0 or more than 100 points, because that is simply not possible. And in this case, the function should throw an illegal argument exception that the points entered are simply invalid. Next is an if statement that checks if the student actually cheated, and if he was caught cheating, then the function returns the grade 5, which is failed. And if he did not cheat, then the function simply calculates the grade from the input of the points and returns the grade of the student. So that's the function we'll be working with in this tutorial, and we will be creating automated test cases for them. So let's go right back to the terminal, and the first thing we need to do is we need to go to the actual change directory into the actual folder of this project. And then what we can do is we say Maven Compile. And what this will do is it will take the class and transform it into bytecode, because EvoSuite will need this to be in bytecode so it can work with it. And we can see the build was successful. And what this just has done is here, you can see it created a new folder called target with a subfolder classes, and there it stored the class in bytecode. Okay, once this is done, we can actually already start generating the JUnit tests. And to do this, we call Maven EvoSuite generate. And this will create the JUnit test cases. And this will take a couple of minutes, I think around 2. Because we did not specify anything here, it will use the EvoSuite default. So like I said, it will try to maximize code coverage by combining a couple of criteria like branch coverage, line coverage, mutation testing, and etc. And yes, because this will take a couple of minutes, I will cut it here and see you back shortly. Okay, we are back and EvoSuite is now finished. Maven is now finished building our JUnit test case. As you can see, the build was successful and took 1 minute and 36 seconds. So we can type Maven EvoSuite info to get some info about what actually just happened, about what Maven and EvoSuite have just created. Yes, and if we see the output here, we see that EvoSuite has found one class in the project. There is only one class, our exam class, and that class is testable, so that's good. And EvoSuite could generate one test suite for this class, and the overall coverage is 91.6% for our class. So that's quite good. Because we're happy with this result, we're now going to tell EvoSuite to export these JUnit test cases, and we can do this by typing Maven EvoSuite export. Okay, so this, as you can see here now, our 2 tests have popped up. We have 2 new files, both for the class exam. And we have one file named ESTest and one file named ESTest scaffolding. And the scaffolding is kind of just like a helper file for EvoSuite to create the tests, and the actual tests are contained in this ESTest file. So this is a JUnit test with a couple of assertions now. We can check them out. Like here, for example, the first test checked the method with the inputs cheated false and points 50, and then had an assertion statement that the actual grade is 4. We can see a couple of other combinations here. And for example, here we also have like an example with cheated false, but points 185 that raised the exception. And here another example with negative points. And what's important to know is EvoSuite will only generate tests that are unique, so it will not do 2 tests that just test the same thing. So yeah, it will try to minimize test cases as best as it can. Okay, so now that we have the test cases, we can actually test our class using this test suite. And to do this, we simply type Maven test. And this will now test our class with these test cases. And here we already get the result. And as you can see, EvoSuite created 12 tests, and our class passed all tests, so there were no failures and no errors. So now I'd like to make one more example. So let's say you're not happy with the default configuration of EvoSuite. And let's say you are only interested in checking for branch coverage. And you can, of course, do so by invoking EvoSuite directly. So what you'd have to do is you would have to download the EvoSuite executable jar from their website and place it in the same folder. And we can now use Maven to install the other dependencies, and we can do so by typing Maven dependency copy dependencies. And this will create in our target folder a new folder dependency where it will place the jar files of the other add-ons we need. And now we can create a new test case with EvoSuite directly, and we would do so by typing java-jar EvoSuite in our version 1.0.6. We'd say we are interested in the class exam. We want the criterion branch, so we're only interested in branch coverage, and we need to tell EvoSuite where it can find the bytecode for our class, and we had that in our folder target/classes. And then we can simply run this. And as you can see here in the output, now it's only analyzing branch coverage for our bytecode of the target classes. Yes, and it's already done, and as you can see, it could achieve 100% branch coverage. So if we now go back to our folder, we see there are two new folders that popped up. One is EvoSuite report, the other is EvoSuite tests. So this EvoSuite test, like the other file, now contains the test that EvoSuite just created with Junit. And in the EvoSuite report folder, we get a CSV file that showed us our coverage. So we just had a look at only criterion branch coverage, and it could achieve a total branch coverage of 100%. So that's how you would test for a specific criterion. Thank you.